Broadcasting live from Daytona Beach, Florida. This is Lighting the Void, and I'm your host, Joe Ruth, and we are live on Fringe.fm, December the 30th on into the 31st, depending on where you're listening from. Live right now. Happy New Year. Happy New Year's Eve. On the East Coast, on the West Coast, you're still catching up to us here. The call-in number for tonight is 1-800-588-0335. As 2021 comes into a close, it's time we look at some predictions. Jeff Harman's back there with us. We're going to talk astrology. We're going to look into what's going to happen with the United States of America. What are some of the energies we need to look out for and how to play all this whole thing? We're going to look at different kinds of astrology. We're going to look at Eastern, Western, what Jeff calls naughty astrology here in just a moment. So new things are on the horizon, definitely. As the new year comes in, weird energies happening, of course. Also, the event is getting closer, so I can't wait to see you guys out in Arizona. I'll be presenting out there at the Petrified Forest in Arizona with you guys. So thank you all who bought tickets. I'll see you there February 10th through the 13th. Make sure, too, you can still go to the store, grab anything from our store, and code word Xavier still good on the altar box. Again, the call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. So happy New Year, y'all. As it's coming, Jeff Harman is here with us and is prepared to reveal the unprecedented and transformative astrological energies that we're going to experience from now through to 2022. And if you don't know who Jeff is, if you've listened to the show for a while, he's kind of a big-time resident astrologer. He's been here since the beginning, right? But he's had over 45 years of experience as an astrologer using classical Western and Vedic traditions, among many other techniques. And you can go to his website at jeffharman.com. And if you want to schedule a reading, get in there and do it. Jeff, thanks for coming back on, man. It's good to have you.
You bet, Joe. Thanks for having me on.
What's it looking like, man? Is it going to get crazier or what?
I think it's going to get crazier, Joe. It is. I think I'm going to join you in the Petrified Forest. Actually, it's really cool that you got an event there. You know, I've been there. That is such a cool place. All these trees are literally petrified. So gorgeous. I've actually been there. What a cool place in the high desert there. I love it.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We got some listeners coming out there, and they're going to hang out with me and a couple other guys. They're presenting another guy's we're going to be doing some Wim Hof out there as well. So yeah, I've spoke at a thing before with Clyde, but this is more of like let's go. This is different, right? This is the 2022. Let's get off grid and do an event and go in the woods kind of thing, you know?
Oh, that's the right place. That's a really cool territory up there. I love Arizona. Arizona is probably one of the most diverse states. It's just so cool. You go from, you know, the low deserts down there. Well, actually the high deserts in Tucson and, you know, up by Phoenix and Scottsdale. And then you go up by the Grand Canyon, and it's just what a cool place. And then up there by, you know, the very upper Four Corners, and then where you're talking here, which is east, it's Snowflake and all that in and around there. It's just awesome. It's absolutely awesome.
It's gonna be a good time. But you're all the way out on the West Coast, man. I sometimes I worry about you out there, you know, but I know you can hold your own. I know that.
Yeah. I mean, we're not right in the insanity zone. We're up. Actually, I'm right by Bell Canyon. In fact, I'm right by Woolsey Canyon. And I'm right next to the Chatsworth Reservoir. So we're kind of up right on the edge of all the canyons. And I love it because we're not in that. And, you know, I'm down in Beverly Hills a lot, which I like. That's the only city I like in Los Angeles is Beverly Hills. It's got an exalted Jupiter, and it sits right on my moon. I remember back in the 80s, I had a friend of mine. She was a really cool psychic. She's long gone now. And she says, Jeff, did you know that Beverly Hills has its exalted Jupiter right on your moon? I said, I know something's got to be causing this. And that was it. I just fell in love with that place. And I do that a lot. I look at the cities. They say there's an angel formed at any great formation of any city, marriages, gemstone settings, you name it. That's a real magical element that I think the New World Orderers and many of the Masons and many, many other ancient cults, as well as societies, are not only have been aware of, but they're very well aware of, that these, when you concretize an event that's very powerful, it leaves elemental angelic forces. So it's interesting stuff. I find it very fascinating.
Yeah, it all makes kind of sense too. That I mean, I'm not anywhere near, like, I've learned a lot of astrological stuff from you, from our talks, and learned a little bit under you, because you've done this for so long, and you just study all kinds of different astrology. But man, there is definitely like an intuitive thing telling me like that we're about to be in some big times right now. You know,
Oh yeah,
some really big times.
are. We definitely are. What happened? See, right now we've got a real cocktail in the sky. As we speak, Venus is retrograde. And people say, okay, well, I've heard of Mercury retrograde, right? But Venus is a whole nother world, because Venus only goes retrograde every couple of years. And the Mayans, the Egyptians, many ancient, including the Vedas, they all knew that when Venus went retrograde under certain conditions, it had a very, really intense effect. And I don't know if anybody's been feeling this over the holidays, but incredibly intense. I know me, I've just been off the charts. And had I not had astrology to go, I can see why I'm feeling like, I'm bouncing off the ceiling. See, Venus is going in between the Earth and the Sun. That's called an inferior conjunction. So in other words, it could go retrograde on the other side of the Sun, which is called a superior. Well, the inferior was known by the Mayans as Quetzalcoatl. In the West, they call it Lucifer falling. And people say, what does that mean? Well, see, Venus is the general significator of pleasures, opulence, money, lust, all this kind of stuff. And it regulates a lot. In fact, many scientists will tell us that the Venus is like a heat sink for the sun. If Venus wasn't where it was, I don't think we'd have the regulated temperatures we do. And this is why the weather has been so off the charts here in certain areas of the world, is because not only do we have a grand solar minimum, but Venus has something called opening of the gates. And it's really affected weather. And it's in a very, very powerful cycle right now, because it's going in what we call combustion. Combustion is a fancy word that just means it's going into the sun. So it's actually going to hit the sun about January 8th. And this was the ancient metaphor for Lucifer falling, that many acts were committed, whether they're exposed or not, that become very detrimental and you have to karmically pay for after Venus goes into the sun. The Mayans actually used to block up their chimneys, put papers and things over their windows, or put, rugs or whatever over their windows to block away Venus's energy when it was the evening star. See, that's what it is right now. The evening star means it sets after the sun until it goes conjunct the sun, which is going to happen January 8th. Then it becomes the morning star. You won't see it right away. It takes a few days for it to get out a little bit. And then it'll station right at the end of January and go direct. That's all intense energy, because it did this whole cycle in a conjunction to Pluto. And I don't know if anybody listening has had any dramatic effects here over the holidays, but I'm here to tell you, I sure felt it. My son, he had an issue with his girlfriend, and you could just see it. Relationship. Oh yeah. Can't you feel it? I mean, it's been like blowing fuses, and very dramatic. Pluto is raw power, and Venus went into a conjunction to Pluto, stationed right next to it within 50 minutes, then turned around and went retrograde into it. So basically all from like the 22nd of December up till right about now, it's been a blur. It's starting to back off now, but it has been a fingernails on the chalkboard blur. And here's what's even exacerbates this more. We're in something called a Kalasarpa Yoga. Now, somebody listening is going to go, what's that? Well, Kalasarpa Yoga is when all of the planets are in between the eclipse points known as where the sun and the moon and the earth align. In fact, are we visually on right now?
Yeah, I'll have it for playback on YouTube later.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah.
So I'm going to put up, for people who want to go afterwards, Joe's always puts this show up on a YouTube channel. And it's probably worth seeing the graphics I've got up right now. See, this is a picture, and you can see this, Joe, where we see the angularity of the Earth, right? We see the sun, and we see the moon. Well, everyone's heard of eclipse points, right? And what the moon's north and south nodes are is they're not planets, they're mathematical points. But in Nadi astrology, they are one big deal. In fact, in the worlds of karma, I really believe they are directly affected towards the soul. Every person I know who's been born with a Kalasarpa Yoga has a very powerful journey in their life, particularly in this lifetime. And those who were born with it broken by the moon every 2 weeks still have it, but it's mitigated. So these are very mysterious things that Nadi astrology addresses. Well, the whole world has been right in a Kalasarpa Yoga, and it just began very, very powerful, and it doesn't stop until the middle of April, almost a third week in April. You might say, okay, cool. What does that mean? Weird stuff happens. This is, if I was a New World Order person, and I don't want to sound conspiratorial, I have to say, when I saw 9/11, when I saw the banks crash, when I saw COVID come in, this would have absolutely been the perfect time to do what happened. Now, some people can say, well, he's a conspiracy theorist. He's saying they made it happen. Well, I'm not going to go there. But the only thing I will say is it certainly seems to coincide with the astrology. For years, people saying, what do you think of the Mayan calendar? Not a single thing. I said, watch out for 220. And that's exactly when this came down. And what's interesting about where we are now is it was right about December 14th, actually it was early on the 15th is when the Mars crossed the South Node. Now, nothing super horrible has happened, but if you watch the news, you'll notice a lot of weird stuff's been going on, like super huge car pileups, like 50, 40 car pileups. The accidents I've seen out here with the rains have been really atrocious. I was just coming in tonight, and I was coming up on Roscoe Boulevard, and I mean, the whole thing's blocked off, cops with, flares and everything.
I've had a lot of friends that have had fender benders too around that time, just tons of them. Yeah.
That's why, because Venus retrograde is notorious for aviation accidents, vehicular accidents, weird, strange phenomena and happenings. And we're also seeing a lot of weird, strange violence right now. And we've got Russia rattling sabers over there. We got China rattling sabers with Taiwan. Of course, they're always doing that. But nonetheless, there's a lot of saber rattling going on. And this is the nature of Venus retrograde combined with a Kalasarpa Yoga. Plus, we're seeing the COVID surges are off the charts right now. And a lot of the people that are vaccinated are getting it the worst from what I'm hearing. And I'm not hearing this. This isn't my opinion. I'm hearing this from doctors and reports. And people are really getting sick. And I know we were really sick here. And this weather breeds that. So the Kalasarpa Yoga is known for strange energies. Combine that with the Venus retrograde, and you got a really powerful cocktail here. So the interesting thing is Venus will go direct, but every 2 weeks, the moon will break the Kalasarpa Yoga and then it'll come back. This all dovetails into the United States. The United States is finishing a Neptune square Mars, Neptune opposition series. People might say, what does that mean? Well, talk about the old saying of, don't urinate down my back, Senator, and tell me it's raining, like in Josie Wales. That's exactly what's going on. There is a lot of things that are happening that are probably very underhanded, things that, I'm hearing a lot of things in the military, et cetera, from sources that are very reliable, that there's a lot of dissension right now. And then this wraps up right when the Kalasarpa Yoga is getting, well, it's not done, but it's close. Between the end of February into, here, I'll show you. And I mentioned this, I think, before on a show with you, Joe. Here, I'll show you right here. This is the United States Sibley chart. And what you're seeing here, for anybody that goes on the YouTube and watches this, there is a Neptune square Mars. It comes back and opposes Neptune. Does it again here this August. That's exactly when the whole Afghanistan debacle came in. All the decrees to the military was you've got to get vaccinated by the end of the year. A lot of stuff went on far deeper than we know. Well, excuse me. The final hurrah here for this aspect is the end of January, right when Venus is getting ready to go direct, and the final Neptune opposition. Neptune is at the end of February, beginning of March. Plain English, this has never happened before except in 1861, right before the Civil War happened. Now, I'm not saying, oh my God, we're going to get a Civil War. I don't get that we will. And not like that.
Because the energies of dissension
total
definitely,
yep,
rise.
Yeah, exactly. And we see the forces at work behind the scenes. I mean, poor people are getting raped and murdered, and the DAs will pat them on the back, say, yeah, $50, get out of here, go get some therapy. You know, and I'm all for therapy. I'm all for helping people. But when someone's raping innocent people, murdering them, I make the guy in Milwaukee that mowed down all those poor little kids, he was out on I think a $50 bail after he mowed over his girlfriend. Yeah, well, it's going on out here. The other day, I pulled into a friend of mine's business, and I saw his whole front end boarded up. And I said, geez, what happened? And the cops were there. He says, oh, smash and grab. He said, they just came up, smashed the hell out of it, took off. And the cop was there, and he walked up to me, and he says, yeah, he says, I'm so sick of it. He says, that's all we do. He said, I've been in the force 40-something years. He said, it's all we do is arrest them. He said, before the ink is dry, they're back on the streets. They're really smart. They know, hey, we just take $900. What are you going to do? So it's almost like this is funded.
Can I ask you, before we move into this, real quick, to go back to the Lucifer fallen thing with the Venus retrograde? Is that when they talk about that in Revelations, is that referring to astrology in Revelations, or
it just might be? Yeah, it just might be. It seems to have to do with lust, money, power, all these kinds of things are what surround Venuses. See, if you look in Nadi astrology, and again, that's my favorite type of astrology, and becoming more so the more I do it, because it's really shows the matrix that we're all in. You know, and to the flat earthers, I even say, whatever it is, folks, whether it's really celestial or flat, we don't care, black suns, all this stuff. The bottom line is it's a celestial matrix. And the signification of Nadi astrology is so accurate, it's creepy, in my opinion. And see, Venus rules love, passions, desires, passions and wealth, all these things that us humans are here wanting, right? So
let me tell you, brother, I've been doing shows for the past 2 weeks on love, and for a real, like, it's not because I've suddenly cared about it. It's because I'm feeling all this stuff too. You bet. It's so, what's interesting is I can know this stuff, and I'm just blown away at how much these planets affect you psychologically. And, one of the yogis that I've studied with had mentioned that. He said, even the most spiritual of people in this world will be tempted. And greatly so, because the grahas, which they call planets in the Vedic astrology, literally are seizers or graspers of the aura. And you don't realize how accurate that is until a loved one you're watching passes away right exactly when the Nadi astrology shows it. Or you see someone else completely change from where they were to a new path in life exactly when these planets possess their lower conscious mind. See, and this is why I love Nadi astrology, because I have some fascinating discussions with psychologists and psychiatrists about this, because when you look at psychiatry, or particularly psychology, which, many psychiatrists base it upon that. And then, of course, the difference is they can prescribe medications. But it's interesting to unravel all these different viewpoints
of motivations that people have, desires that they have. And then when you juxtaposition that with the astrology, you just scratch your head and go, wow, wow. I mean, I'll never forget 1978. I had a guy come by and I wasn't aware of it, that I had these energies. And he, I knew it, but I wasn't aware, you know, like in my head that day. And he wanted me to drive his motorcycle and I didn't want to. So I jump on it, you know, we're going down the road. He took mine, I took his. And this car pulls out in front of me. But boom, next thing I know, I'm in the hospital. They're sewing on my head. My leg's broken. The cop comes up to my room and he shakes my hand. I had to sign some paper. I said, what are you shaking my hand for? He says, because you lived. He says, we saw the bike smoldering halfway 2 feet into the front of the Oldsmobile station wagon. And we said, you know, those were pretty substantial back in the 70s. They didn't have all plastic in them. And he said, we said body bag, because I flew 100 feet and I didn't have a helmet on, but I landed in a ditch that was mud and grass, and it saved my life. But I did get pretty banged up. And then I go look at the astrology and I'm going, why did that happen? And what do I see? A primary directed Mars, one time in a life aspect, conjuncting Mercury. General signification of intensity and vehicular interaction. And I'm like, okay, you can't make this stuff up. It's right on. And I've seen it. Like I just had a brother pass away in the Nadi astrology. He had the moon south node about to wrap up with his Saturn. And I told him, I said, Ed, I said, you know, I'm not going to lie to you. You got a rough road ahead of you between now and spring. And I think he was so bad on the morphine and being so cut up. I think he could work in himself. I really do. And he just took himself out because he couldn't walk. He couldn't do anything. And poor guy would have been just 60 years old. And, you know, this is oh, yeah. What are you going to do? And God bless him. And in a lot of ways, I'm happy for him because he at least is out of pain, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, and just like I love in your intro of your show, how, you know, we're not these physical bodies. The cool thing is that animals too. I just lost here. I'll show you my favorite animal right here. She will never look at that. That's my dog Shelby. And she was such a gorgeous dog. We got her when my son was 4 years old and she just died. And I was really, you know, it was just so hard on me. And what's so wild, I was down in Beverly Hills working with a very dear friend of mine. And all of a sudden she says, my God, she goes, I see Shelby. And I said, so do I. She was all around my head, just like exactly. I could see her fur. I could see her ears, just like you guys are seeing on the picture right now. And she just was dancing around me. And that was it. She was gone. And it was like they say there's group spirits that guide animals. They're a lot different than us sometimes at the levels that they're at. And she was, you can see it, what an amazing dog she was. She was like a human. And tough dog too, man. She'd tear it up with coyotes. But that was so interesting because I have not felt her since. And, you know, she was around here for years. I mean, she was with us for almost 18 years and astounding. So, you know, the spirit is not us. And that's where the planets work. Just like what's going on in the world right now. This Kalasarpa Yoga and the stuff that's going on with the United States affects us all in very deep, karmic, powerful ways. And it's going to affect everybody on the planet. The biggest thing that happens, and this is the one I had mentioned before, right between this final Neptune square Mars opposition Neptune series, look down here, Pluto return. The United States has never, ever had a Pluto return. Why? Because it takes about 246 to 248 years, it's not exact, for Pluto to go around. So it all depends on exactly for us. And
before we get into this, we got to go into the break here, but let's leave it right there. That's Pluto returns 248 years before it happens again. That's something we're about to go through. Oh boy. We'll be right back with Jeff Harman, you guys. Go to his website, jeffharman.com. Stay with us. 22 astrological energies here. And man, there's a lot of intense stuff, you know, We always talk about that, Jeff. Seriously, like when you come on here, there's always like intense energies. There's always some massive cycle that's happening. But these look like wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Like these are like big.
Yeah,
For sure.
well, they've been happening ever since 2020. And, I've been talking, the big one that came in was the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction on the winter solstice of 2020, which was right before the beginning of this year. So, just exactly a year ago. And that ushers in this new 240-year era. This stuff takes time, but it's like a big page that's been completed, or big chapter is a better way to say it. And a new chapter is about ready to be written. And we're in the processes of writing this new chapter. And this, again, 1 year is nothing in light of 240. So, and it's not exactly 240, but it's approximate. You have to remember, these are Gregorian calendars. No calendar is perfect. And I have to say, the cycles of astrology really aren't equatable directly in years. They're equatable in aspects and geometry. And so we, again, had the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. COVID hit, shut down the place globally. And just like 9/11, we're going to see ripple effects from that far exceed COVID itself, just like 9/11. That had major impacts on personal freedoms, governmental powers globally. You'll never run through an airport again and jump on a plane. There's also things that the Patriot Act did that people will never fully understand, that gave far-reaching powers, and just like the 2008 bank crash. So these are major power points that I find are really powerful. The Saturn-Pluto conjunction that brought in COVID has historically, if you look back, the Roman Empire officially ended on one of them. And they're not that infrequent. It's why this one was so significant is because it aligned with the 240-year Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. And we're seeing some very corrosive forces and powers at work right now. And the question is, and this dovetails back into what we were talking about, what does this Pluto return mean? Are we going to have some type of a civil unrest? Are we going to have some type of I have to say, Pluto returns always seem to have an element of the phoenix rising out of the ashes. But, that also goes with, you can't get the phoenix to rise up unless there were ashes first. So this is going to be very interesting with the confluence of this exceedingly manipulative Neptune series that I spoke about earlier, the square Mars, which is very subterfuge, and the opposition Neptune, which is, again, I call it bamboozlement. It's what it is. It's always an aspect of subterfuge, trying to get things over in an underhanded way over people without them fully being aware of the significance of it. Every person.
Does this happen? Do these energies play out in people's individual lives too, or is this?
Yes, they do. They will, but this is more on the United States. This isn't. Gotcha. Oh yeah, I see people who have Neptune square Mars. Oh yeah, I've seen business deals just go horribly when the person had a Neptune square Mars or opposition or conjunction Neptune. In fact, that's one of the classic things in astrology. They say if you've got business deals going on or other things with Neptune hard aspects to Mars, you want to be very circumspect. Call your attorney, double, triple, quadruple check everything. And, I can tell you story after story of clients who in location astrology who have lived on Neptune Mars combinations. I had one doctor, I can't mention names, but the boyfriend was literally trying to poison her with arsenic and stealing all the gold. I believe
that, man. I believe that. There's some sick, twisted people out there for sure. Yeah.
Welcome to Neptune square Mars. You see, and this is exactly what's going on in the United States right now. So and the Kalasarpa Yoga that I mentioned earlier and the Venus retrograde, that's different because that's happening in what we call mundane astrology. Mundane is a word often used for what's in the sky. It's affecting the entire planet. Just like the Saturn Pluto conjunction that happened that brought in COVID, that's not a US thing, though it affected the US, but it affected every country and every individual in the world. I mean, I've got clients telling me they're going door to door right now down in Peru. In Peru, the military is going door to door, knocking on their door saying, got a syringe in one hand, we got a vaccine passport in the other. Now, if you take the one in the right hand, the syringe, you're going to be able to go buy food tomorrow and get anything you want. If you don't, you're going to stay at home. You can't go anywhere, nowhere. So this is what we're beginning to see is, and we're seeing it all over the globe. And it's you know, like in California, you know, they've got it mandated. You can't go anywhere without a face diaper. It's the way it is. And the sad part is most infectious disease people will tell you, unless you have a very high quality mask, you're probably not stopping it anyhow.
Yeah, it's not doing anything. They've got COVID symptom sniffing dogs in California in certain places. I'm not playing.
Oh yeah.
It's you know, and to me, when they talk about this Omicron virus or whatever, you hear it come across, you know, CSNBC or whatever, and it's like, well, some young people have mild symptoms, and basically they're explaining a cold, a hardcore cold, right, yep, and turning it into the Black Plague, right, and it's. Meanwhile, these pharmaceutical companies are getting rich, and you keep taking the plunge, so you're shutting down. This is just this isn't Jeff saying this. This is me saying this. So you're shutting down your immune system, and then you become a drug addict for all these booster shots for the rest of your life, and now you're in their world. I'd be real careful with this.
You're exactly right. I've heard many doctors who know a lot more about this stuff than me, who really argue, and they make good arguments that natural immunity is highly effective. It's one of the best things. You know, your immune system is magical. It really is. COVID's real, man. I'll tell you, I got it. It's strong. But I've had flus, and you know, I've had doctors say, you know, Jeff, COVID is just the flu. COVID-19 is a different strain of it. So, you know, I mean, COVID's been around for a long time. The flu has been around for thousands of years, and many people have died from it. It's very dangerous. I mean, look at Charlton Heston died of the flu. So many people die of the flu and pneumonia. It's exceedingly powerful. You know, we had it here. Well, I had someone bring it in, and oh my God, it was really powerful. But I never had a fever over 100.5, and it came down, and I used a number of different treatments, and I got to say, you know, it's not 100% gone, but I'm not immune anymore. I'm not contagious. And you know, there's a lot of alternatives. I don't want to get into that because, you know, we'll have your YouTube channel shut down, but you know, right. I mean, and you will, they'll shut this down. But that's what we're seeing. See, that's back to the astrology. This is the kind of stuff we're seeing, is the totalitarian forces that are serpentining around human rights in many, many ways, and personal freedoms. And this is where it's at. And this is very much in alignment with what this astrology says. What I would say is the Pluto return on the United States almost looks like backlash. And one of the things that I was most encouraged about is the Nadi astrology. And for anyone who doesn't know what Nadi astrology is, it's kind of a strange sounding astrology. It's not naughty, it's Nadi. And, but because I've had people joke around, is that Nadi astrology? No, it's Naadi. And for those who've ever been to India or studied in yoga studios, the Nadi palm leaves are also adjunct to this whole science. And it's probably been the most fascinating astrology I've ever seen. Most Vedic astrologers, you know, Vedic's kind of a pop term. One of my friends, Chakrapani, who passed away not too long ago, he and Howard Beckman both died. And I really like those two guys. And methods that most people used when they call themselves Vedic astrologers are using Maharishi Parashara, or they're using Maharishi Jaimini, or some amalgam of the two. Nadi's a whole nother world because it's looking at us. See, they don't even call death. They call death liberation of karma. So this gets real parallel to Egyptian, Chaldean, and the ancient Hebrew stuff, where we're not just here in these meat suits called bodies having a good time and a bad time. We're doing it for a purpose. There's a shared soul root that we are often interacting with at different points in time, or many of them sometimes. And that purification or rectification process is believed to go on until last breath. And the planets, the matrix of the planets, are not predicting the future. They're interacting with us in like an interactive consciousness, and our free will is clearly the key. And it's senior to astrology. It doesn't seem like it all the time, but it is. Like my son, he really has been having a rough time, and Camille's like, "Oh my God, Jeff, we need to get him to a therapist." And I said, "Okay, let me do that." So I brought him in here and I said, "Aiden, look you got Mars transiting your 12th house. He's 19 going on 20. And he just had a K2 dasha. And when I watched the psyche of a 19 going on 20-year-old man get what I showed him, and then I let him read in the book, this is what the meaning of Mars in the 12th, deep subconscious fears, deep subconscious welling up of change, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He went, "Oh my God, that's exactly what's happening." I said, "I know." Isn't it wild? Guess what? He has changed his reactions. And even further, he knows that, guess what? Right around the 13th of January, that Mars will cross his ascendant. What does that mean in plain English? Popeye on spinach. He'll be boom. He'll be right
back in his groove. Yeah.
He'll be back in the groove.
I got a phone call from my son the other night, just going through the same thing. Intense fear. He had a flip out, no, him and his girlfriend are going through something like really big. And I was trying to tell him, I said, "Man, this is just part of it. You have to be able to feel these things and understand them and just move through it, but try not to give into it so much." Right. I mean, there's things we can't help for sure, but I think maybe you're right about like these energies. I mean, if a car crash happens, it happens. But if we feel an energy, I think God's given us power as humans to be able to, or how we react to it is the big question, right?
Well, that's it. And I got to tell you, ever since I had that bad accident in 78, I paid a lot closer attention to dangerous transits and progressions. I just had a really horrible series of aspects coming through Los Angeles the last year and a half, 2 years. And I really got to say, because I was aware of it and I didn't do risky things, particularly with vehicles, being around dangerous places, more conscious awareness, I didn't have an event. And that's the key. And that's what I love in readings is today more than ever, like with Zoom, and people can see all the cycles I'm showing them. It's not about predicting the future. It's about look at the cycles you're in, and you'll find every one of us are somewhere. Like you look at Saturn. Saturn is your karma. Wherever Saturn is, that's where you're going to be focused on and the release in your life. There's 12 houses, starting from you physically all the way to your money, your career, relationships, partnerships, groups and friends and undoings, all this, it's all there. And there's great lessons to learn. And Mars every 2 years is the stimulator. And see, like everyone right now is going to have this Kalasarpa Yoga somewhere in their chart. It'll be different for every individual. See, if you look at where is that sitting and what house is in your chart, and then you look at what's Venus doing as it retrogrades and conjuncts Pluto in the sky to your chart. See, everybody's going to be tweaked differently. Some people may not have any problems. They if it's making a great aspect, that conjunction, they may find something quite blissful is happening. Or
I got a message, and that's why I was asking you during break. I got a couple of messages from people that said they're they went through some things, but they're actually, as far as what you were talking about with the Venus stuff is concerned, good things are happening for them in that field, you know.
It's every one of us are like exceedingly complex, fine-tuned tuning forks. And that's even a really bad analogy, because the human psyche, the soul, the spirit, and the psyche are so exceedingly complex that I don't even think astrology can be analyzed deep enough to figure it all out. There's secrets far beyond what we can measure with the tools that we have. And what I'm saying here is that this celestial matrix is interacting with every single one of us in a very unique way. And it's so profound. And that's the magic of life. It really is. It's truly, to me, life is divine magic. And it is. You find somebody in a university, and I'm not talking about genetic splicing, but somebody who can create and ensoul life, just the genetics alone, let alone, and again, I'm talking about creating all these species and all of us, and then just start thinking about ensouling that. And the
let me ask you this question, and this is kind of off topic here a little bit, because I talk about we've talked about magic a few times on the show, and I'm talking about the old stuff where the banishings, right? And I was reading a book by Robert Wang, who was talking about the old Sephirs and all of this stuff and the Kabbalah and the angelics, but he mentioned in there that some of the older ceremonial alchemists would banish Saturn constantly, right? Or do the banishing of the hexagram. And people started to notice that I don't know if this is myth or whatever, but people started to notice that they weren't aging like everybody else. And things that happened to other people weren't happening to them. Now, that could be myth, right? That could be confirmation bias or whatever. But I know when we talk about planetary energies, there's a lot of information out there that is going around more now than ever. That's occult, that is teaching people how to work or banish with these planetary energies. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Oh yeah, there's a lot to that. There's a lot to that. Oh yeah, well, some of the older teachers that I used to have, I was always kind of stunned, because they would always, I'd go into the ashram and work with them, study Vedic astrology years ago. And they would always say, before we study astrology, we're going to do a prayer. And he'd light a candle, light some incense, very sacred. And he would do a propitiation to all the celestial energies with God above interacting through it. And it's called a Nav Graha Mantra. And I thought at first, well, this is very interesting, I wonder if it has any effect. And then he started talking about, there's something called a vidya. Now, we call it an angel in the West, but a vidya means that it is a spirit that comes and resides upon you when you have a pure heart and you want to help someone, truly to help them, not for your ego or to impress them and all that. Because if anybody's doing astrology for that, you really shouldn't. And that's, I think where I got a little bit better is when I actually try, and I still want to just get away from astrology because I get so busy, I get burned out, but then I do a reading, for someone, and I can see that this poor soul got some insight as to why the shitstorm that's hitting him or her is happening. And then when they get, oh my God, it's going to get better here. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm not God. I'm just a mailman. I'm just here telling you that's what the chart. Immediately the psyche changes. It's like my son, the minute he got, wow, that Mars this is exactly how I feel, like really depressed, really angry, moaning and crying. And all of a sudden, it didn't make it go away, but it completely changed his viewpoint of the reactions he was happening. And I said, now you see this from a positive standpoint. You see that maybe the pain, anger, frustration, and stuff that you're going through is actually building you. It's actually making you grow. And this is why the religions demonized astrology, in my opinion, is because there's too much insight in it if you use it the old sacred ways. There's a lot of charlatans who scam on people, but if you're really trying to help someone and you can cut through the wheat, through the chaff, and get to what what does all this mean? You take it up to 100,000 feet and you look at someone's cycles, and there's a lot of them with Vedic astrology and all the progressions. You get a picture, you get a background picture of what's happening. And you see the peaks and the valleys. And that's very valuable. It's valuable to me. And I've seen it, I've just seen it. It's like,
well, I mean, you have to think like, if Mars, like I have Mars in Western astrology, I have Mars and Libra in the 12th house, right?
Right.
So
right.
I'm constantly with this battle of fairness in my life, and it drives me crazy when things aren't fair, But as I'm learning to grow through that, and I have been, I think that this sense of liberation that you can get from some of the deepest pains that you have in your life is where the divinity is. You're not going to feel liberated. Even if you hit the lottery, that's amazing. But to feel liberated from your karma or things that are really deeply hurt in your psyche is a whole other kind of happiness,
That's right. That's exactly right. And, every one of us have amazing traits, and we all have very tough things that we have to learn. That's why we're here, I mean, there's none of us that are perfect, I mean, I always wondered why my childhood, particularly my teenage years, was just like Krakatoa. I mean, I couldn't tell you the stuff that I went through. I tell people, I mean, man, I'll tell you what. Yeah, I mean, I found my father at the bottom of the stairs with a German Ruger in his hand after I had taken my brother and mother to the airport. And, he had blood coming out of his mouth. And I ran to the bottom of the stairs and realized that he had just drunk a bunch of quarts of whiskey and emptied a bunch of pills and Valiums, and it was a murder-suicide. And I was the only guy there, and he doesn't sleep upstairs. And the interesting thing is, I called the hospital, and they said, "What did he take?" And I read it all. They said, "Trust me, before you get him here, he'll be dead unless he throws up." Well, I said, "He's throwing up right now." Well, guess what? He's still alive. And, I totally forgive him, because this guy, in fact, believe it or not, we actually get along. But violence, so accurate in the chart, all his life. I mean, none of my brothers will speak to him. I'm the only one that speaks to him. And he accuses me, and, he's kind of crazy. But, it's interesting, because when you look at people differently, you realize we're souls having a physical experience, and the lower conscious mind is not us. It's the comport through the three-dimensional five-sense world. It ain't us. It's certainly influenced by the astrology strongly, and particularly depending on where consciousness is on each individual, which is completely different. And that gets into reincarnation, where the nadi is mind-blowing, because Jupiter becomes the signifactor of the soul. So you begin to see the previous lifetime. So like, Joe, I'm looking at your chart right now. See, your previous lifetime, you had Mars and Saturn. And what's interesting is it shows you were with your dad, and it was war. Something really bad happened in the previous incarnation. And but that's okay. I mean, you're really awesome points are your moon in the midheaven. Anytime you have moon in the midheaven, because I hear that all the time about you. I say, I really like you on Joe Roop's show, because he's really respectful, and he's just fun to listen to. And you are. And I told you that because you got the moon in the 10th house. Moon in the 10th house makes you well-liked by the public. And that's what you got. And it's with the North Node. See, it's with Rahu. So that's excellent for radio. And you have an air trine on that. See, your moon is in Gemini, your soul force, Jupiter, is in Libra, that's air, and it's with Venus in Aquarius, which is air. See, they look at astrology completely different. So you have this exceedingly powerful air trine aspecting the moon and the second house in the 10th. What's the second house? Your speech, your voice. So I see this all the time. It's so accurate. It's creepy. Your Achilles heel was growing up in that house. I mean, you got Mars and Saturn aspect in the fourth. You don't tell me your life growing up was a bowl of cherries. It couldn't.
No, I don't even talk about near close to stuff that I went through when I was a kid.
All that, it had to suck. You had to get your ass kicked.
Yeah, I got out of there, like fast as I could.
He probably beat you like a redheaded stepchild, huh?
Yeah, buddy. Well, that was like one of the first things too that
Yeah.
you told me. I remember, and I know we got to take a break here, but I remember the first time you read my chart, you're like, "Boy, man, your dad beat your ass, didn't he?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Mars puts its fourth house aspect onto K2 in the fourth. Yeah, that's the way it is.
But there are people that fall apart at the seams. Like I think what the point is as bad as it sounds, it happened for a reason. It's something our soul is trying to overcome.
Right.
Right. It happened for a reason. So we got to take a break. I know we got some more stuff here that Jeff is wanting to get into that's going to go on with our country, especially. And then we can take your questions as well. We don't do readings over the air. This is different. Jeff's stuff is really extensive. If you have a quick question to ask him, we can do that with the phone calls and stuff too. But we'll be right back with Jeff Harman. Go to his website, jeffharman.com. There's lots of stuff there that you can choose from as far as the readings, gemstones. Go check it out. It's really cool. We'll be right back. Coming back from the top of the hour here with Jeff Harman as we head into 2022. Happy New Year's Eve, everybody. If you're still on the West Coast, you're almost there. I can't believe it's 2022, but the energies are intense, right? So had to play a little Led Zeppelin, right, for Jeff, man. There's been a couple of nights, like I said, Jeff's been doing this show since the beginning. I know he goes on Veritas and other radio shows too. Gotta love Veritas Radio, by the way. That's such a great show. And we had a big, long talk about Led Zeppelin one night. So there you go, Jeff. That's for you, buddy.
Love it. Yeah, that's a band. You know, my mom bought me that first Led Zeppelin record in the 60s, and I'll never forget it. I thought, what a cool thing. You know, have your mom buy you Led Zeppelin, you know, when you're a kid.
Yeah, right.
It's pretty cool. You know, and my mom was the most awesome person on the planet. She really was. She was more my friend than my mother. In fact, it was because of her, I think I survived my insane childhood. And yeah, she loved Led Zeppelin. She thought it was awesome.
Well, before we get back into the what's going to happen in the United States, I want to reiterate what we were saying before the break, like, because a lot of my audience members, you know, we have people call in and cry sometimes, like, oh, you know, this show changed my life and stuff like that. So, and it's what I'm realizing about the people that listen to this show is these are people that are spiritual in nature, that are going through some tough things, but are willing to face it. Right. So, I think it's really important that we reiterate that message just one more time, you know, about us being a soul, regardless of how crazy our upbringing was, how hard things are, yeah, that it's important that we understand what's happening.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's what keeps me doing astrology. It really does. You know, I when I was in the 70s, I was really into music. I was really into all kinds of things, very, very technical. I always loved music and electronics and acoustics. And I was really kind of a tech head, you know, and my mother had exposed me to astrology, and I actually kind of laughed at it. I said, come on. I said, yeah, I've heard about that, and stuff doesn't work. And she said, well, give it a shot before you debunk it. And I did. And I got to tell you, it was such a tool, such a guiding tool. That was the big thing, such a guiding tool. And, you know, it takes a long time to really fully understand it, and you'll never fully understand it. I'm humiliated by it all the time, or humbled is probably a better word, because it's exceedingly complex, but it's profound. It's literally the code of the soul. It really is. They say the guardian angel from the Yetziratic worlds, which is right above the astral planes, actually picks your parents. And think about that. Anyone listening could honestly say, I could certainly say that there was never a time in our lives that we had less free will of choice than the parents we were born to. Think about that. And they say that guardian angel, I mean, you get what you get. You drop in where you drop in. Yeah. You can't talk, you can't walk, your mind can't even process when you're a baby. So it's all a white sheet. They say that guardian angel ties the spirit, psyche, and the soul to the bodies by silver cord, or the embryo, at conception. And then when we exit the womb after the periods of gestation, which is usually about 9 months, the first breath is when it is believed. And see, the Nadi says that. It says the earth, when the sun, which is the seed, the moon, which is the crucible of spirit, manifests at the eastern horizon where you're born, that's where spirit becomes manifest physically. And that first breath really, truly is your birth chart. And it's not you. Everybody runs around calling themselves, like, oh, geez, you're a Libra, you're a Scorpio. And I always laugh and go, no, you ain't. Like they'll tell you you're an Aries, And if you look at Vedic astrology, your sun's not even an Aries. It's way back in Pisces, Joe.
Yeah.
So, that right off the bat, a lot of people get really confused. And I said, well, let's back it up further here. Your soul is believed to be created hundreds of dimensions above any of the rotating galaxies, let alone the solar systems and all that. And I believe it's true. And
yeah, like you're a snowflake of astrological complex energies. That's who you are.
That's well put. That's right on, because you line up every Aries, every Pisces, every sun sign on the planet, look them in the eye real close. There's not a single one the same, not a single soul the same, and they can't be the same. So what the hell is astrology? It's the interaction of the unfoldment of karma in what we call time. There's no time. The earth rotates on its axis once a day. We think the sun's rising, culminating, setting, and going at midnight. It's not doing that. We're rotating. The earth goes around the sun once a year. The seasons change because of the angularity. The moon goes around. It's a celestial clock, folks. Time is not an illusion. It's very real. But on the other hand, you exit the physical body, there ain't no time. And time is clearly a physical construct. And
you can even see that in either Yetziratic world or close to the astral planes in the dream world. Like people, there's no concept of the dream beginning. There's the dreams blend. There's no time. Like that's why they're so crazy sometimes,
That's right. That's exactly right. They actually call the 49 dimensions and 49 subdimensions of the astral planes. I've actually got that diagram up right now. Yetzira means, it's a strange word that means formation. And for many of you who's poked around in the Kabbalah, I've heard of a text called the Sefer Yetzira. Sefer's book, Yetzira, means formation. And this gets into all the very exceedingly complex elements of space. And when you talk in quantum physicists and all these, different string theories and multi-dimensions, it gets really unquantifiable, because when we start looking at what is everything, it might be atoms and molecules, but there's etheric energies binding it all together. And it's exceedingly complex. Everything is just energy. What's holding it together? Divine angelic forces that are far above any of the physical worlds. They believe the seraphims, the cherubims, and the thrones may be the upper kind of classes of angels that really create it all. And the rest of the angels are kind of the foot soldiers that work it down through the various dimensions. They said if the seraphims ever stopped chanting the permutations, nothing would exist. It'd be gone.
Do you think that some of the books that, like in the library, maybe the Library of Alexandria or something, are missing? Maybe we're missing some really important texts, because the more I study this stuff, a lot, even the Bible, a lot of it goes around that word Elohim. But when you study this stuff Kabbalistically, the Elohim is it's not even the middle hierarchy of the angels, right? So it's a little bit lower. So there's a lot of missing stuff in here.
It's so complex, you'll never figure it out, ever. And I personally think God keeps those secrets very close. The ones who really know that really get the blessings always are guided by upper angelic forces. And I think all of us are going to get there someday. Of course, what does that mean, day? But I think we're all going to get there at some point in the evolution of the soul. There's no question about it. We're all at different levels. And I believe that what's magical about that is the secrets to creation are locked up. And they're held by the angels, and maybe with good cause, because humans would probably screw it all up if they had it all at once. But there are some very conscious souls that, like for instance, they always say, in order to manipulate life and death and the physical planes, you have to have command of the fourth hierarchy. And I really believe that that's true. And nobody's going to learn that through grimoires, magical techniques. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. In fact, they actually say,
Daskalos, do you think he understood it?
I think he had a portion of it, yes. And that's what's very mysterious, is I've studied a lot of documents, and there are certain folks who get portions of it. And I think as we process through the equinoxes, that this stuff changes a lot. Like, I'm sure you've heard of some of the Tartarian stuff. There's a lot going on this planet that's kept very secret. And I think there's a lot of wars that go on in many different dimensions that have a lot to do with the types of souls that are passing through here in waves. And this reality structure that we're in is all an individual reality. I mean, you talk to and look at how the diversity of people. I mean, you got everything going on here. I mean, everything. You have some of the most divine, enlightened souls. You have some of the most hideous, low-level karmic things playing out between souls. You know, you scratch your head and you go, wow. I always call this place the soul cauldron. And I think portions of it are an insane asylum for the souls to play out, and it's where, you know, it's a very divine place where they're mopping up and they're getting ready to move on to other dimensions. I mean, they claim there could be 49 parallel universes and 49 subdimensions in each one. I don't know about you, but that's unfathomable. And if that's true,
I think you're right on this, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but one of the most intelligent guys I ever met in my life that talked to me about the Kabbalah and the Golden Dawn and Kabbalah, and he was big into Hebrew Kabbalah and a lot of the same stuff you talk about, but he was also big into alchemy, and he passed away in his 50s, right?
Oh, wow.
But he wrote a book called The Kabbalah of the 50 Gates. His name is Stephen Ash, and he talks about a lot of the same stuff that you talk about. So
anybody who gets around it's gonna stumble into it. You know, you take Agrippa. See, this is what's interesting. Like Henry Cornelius Agrippa, who lived in the 14th century, which is very interesting because that seemed to be a time when great alchemical, spiritual knowledge was really manifest in the European areas. And very mysterious. And, you know, Nicholas Flamel, so on and so forth. But the real ones were the secret ones behind the scenes. Like John Tridemus was actually bequeathing all this information to a very secret society, very involved in many different disciplines. And God only knows where the trail led with him. So there's then very interesting angelic and human, and I do believe that they go hand in hand, who allow certain knowledge to keep precipitating. And like Abramelin, he literally said that the angels allowed this particular document not to be destroyed in fires and floods. And this is the interesting thing about catastrophes and many different elements that happen in wars. Very strange stuff. When you really look back at it, it's like, wow, you know, what all happened here? There's some very mysterious.
I got to tell you, Manly, and I want to ask you this about the United States, okay? Because just the other day I read a text. We were talking about Christmas in the North Pole, and Manly P. Hall had this manuscript he called "What the Ancient Wisdom Expects from His Disciples." I don't know if you read it, but it's a short manuscript, and he said that the secret societies have been here since the beginning of time, spawned from the North Polar Cap. There's 7 schools that have been going on since the beginning of time. And in the esoteric worlds, not the exoteric, like what we see, but the esoteric worlds, that these secret societies or these 7 schools or these 7 mystery masters, whatever, are manipulating the destiny of man as we speak.
I think he's right on. You know, I got a chance to meet Manly P. Hall back in the 80s. He was a cool guy. He was a really cool guy. He's a huge guy. God, I remember going into his office. It's like, you know, I wanted to buy The Secret Teachings of All Ages. And by the way, anybody who's interested, you should buy that book. It's a great book. I got the I think it was the 50-year or 26-year Jubilee, whatever. It was the Jubilee. I got it over there somewhere.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to pay $250. So I went in there and I said, Manley, I said, you got any way I could get a better deal? He stands up, right? A guy unfolds. He's like 6'4", So he and I are very close to the same. But that dude was like a walking wall. I mean, he was really huge. I mean, I'm like, dang, buddy. You're like, you go sideways through the door. I mean, it was just huge. And we went in the back. And he says, you know how to bind books? I said, well, yeah, I know how to repair them a little bit. And so for $40, he gave me the Secret Teachings of All Ages that had the cover torn off. And I still got it and I love it. But he was interesting because in 1916, I think it was 16 or 1918, he was giving a talk at a church down, I think it was a Church of Christian Science or something, down in downtown Los Angeles, a long time ago. I mean, this is the birth of Hollywood. And somebody was in the audience and heard him speak. And it was a guy from one of the secret societies in Southern California, behind what I call the Orange Curtain, down in the Orange County area. And he got all this information that basically was quite profound. So he was really lucky. And I find this all the time is if anyone ever reads the Secret Teachings of All Ages, there's nothing 100% definitive in there, but oh my God, it touches on almost every single, it's amazing. Egyptianism, Christianism, Hebrewism, the Kabbalah, the alchemy. It's stunning stuff. And I mean, every single secret societal discipline it's a profound document. And there's some really interesting stuff in there, talismans and ciphers and all this stuff. It's an incredible book, and I've always cherished it. And
well, I'm asking, I brought that up because I get this feeling that there is definitely a secret agenda of the United States happening. And
it's a Masonic temple in Washington. The District of Criminals is not even in the United States. They call it the District of Columbia. I've renamed it to the District of Criminals, but at least lately. But it's all of its streets are geometrically laid out by a French architect. There's many great books on that. It's literally a talisman. And these guys were in the gemstones, they're in the talismans. If you look, here, I'll show you a plate here. This is George Washington in his apron. This is a very famous plate. They were laying the cornerstone of the Capitol at a good astrological time. So these guys were into ritualism par excellence, just like I see what's going on right now with all the stuff that we've been seeing since 9/11 forward. It has been clockwork. Even when Nixon took us off the gold standard, we're about to see some unprecedented things happen to the United States. The question is, what's it going to be? I think from the best that I can get, and I love to use interrogation, and I started to mention earlier, if you look, the United States, what we call, let me start here. It's called the Sibley chart, but this is actually, I'm putting it on the screen right now. This is the Nadi astrology of the United States. Something very interesting is about to happen. Not only do we have a Pluto return happening 3 times, commencing literally right in March of this year, right smack in the middle of this series completing. Major transformation, and it's likely to be very intense. Then we got Pluto coming back again this summer, and the final hurrah is at the beginning of 2023. Well, isn't that interesting? July 4th of 2022, the United States will turn 246 years old. Well, for anybody who looks at this on the YouTube, you will see Saturn is one of the most important planets to view as far as progressions, because it moves in 30-year increments. So in 240 years, Saturn will move into the air trine of the United States for 30 years. That's a long time. That does not get out until 2052. So what does this mean in plain English? Well, it's aspecting the air trine with Venus, Jupiter, the Sun, and Mars in it. A lot of drama, a lot of intensity, but the sun Jupiter and Venus in Nadi astrology are always, always destiny makers. The moon also is in this exceedingly powerful trine. So plain English, I lean towards this is going to be intense, but it's actually going to end up really good. And I think when it's all done, there are forces going on. And, you know, we've mentioned this before. Forget the politicians, because they're all dancing to the owners who print the money, and they're way above the Federal Reserve. They're way above everything. They own this place. They literally manipulate and own the entire Western global system. And no matter what Russia and China are doing, they're at the effect of it. These guys control the gates of all the flows of money. And, you know, I always kind of laugh when I hear the Fed say, well, we've got all of Biden's trillions that he needs for whatever he's going to do. Oh, when you hear this about every president, right? And it's interesting, where do they get it? You know, I mean, where's the vault, folks? Where's the letter of credit that they can just go get untold trillions and just keep shoveling it in the furnace as the sparks fly out all over all of us? So we have, as a country, this ability to print our own money. And even though there's a lot of threats right now and a lot of changes that they want to implement, the United States really controls the game. And there is secret military that is layered between ours. And there's some real changes going on right now. And I think it's reflected by this Pluto return. So what's going to be interesting is what's going to happen. I think because Mars is involved and the moon, see, anytime you get the moon and Mars, those two are always destiny changers. They're very powerful. They call them destiny modifiers or disruptors, and they are. They are. Every time in my life I've seen progressions and aspects to them, I know I'm in for a boat ride. And it's true. So the United States has got the same thing. But because the United States has the Jupiter, which is God's, what I would like to call soul force energy. It's called Jiva in Nadi astrology. It is the life force blessings of the soul. And when it's on a country or an entity like this, it often has very positive connotations, especially when it's combined with the Sun and Venus, and it is. So even though this is likely to be very dynamic and very intense, it's likely to come out where we land on our feet better than we think we will. And, you know, I'll tell you what,
good.
Yeah, you bet. Because if these older people really running things love their children too, they better hope it all turns out that way, because it's dicey stuff right now. And there are forces that are far beyond the politicians, the military, and even the bankers themselves. There's a lot of demonic stuff that's intertwined in this, and some pretty hideous stuff going on. But I always say, God and these upper angels are far, far, far above anything down here, anything. And that's where I would, oh, you bet. And no matter what happens, it's that always rules, always rules.
Right. That's something that you guys can count on, no matter how scary it gets, what he just said right there. Yeah. So look, here's the thing. We got to take our last break. It's just a few minutes here, but we will come back. And I know some of you guys got some questions. I'm getting hammered here with questions. So let's off with, because we know the big man's running the show, but it's cool to talk about all of this stuff that's happening astrologically. And we're going through some pretty big stuff here. So Jeff, I know I kind of cut you off there because we had to take a break, but you can go ahead and start back up where you left off.
I'll make this real quick, because I want to be clear. You know, because a lot of people have asked me, they're very concerned about what's going on in the US. And I've got a lot of clients in Europe, they're saying the same thing. And like, hey, man, you guys go down. We're really screwed. And what I like, and here's what's encouraging. Anybody who jumps on the internet will be able to see this diagram. It's very complex because I have to do Nadi astrology by hand because there's no computer programs that actually do it. So what I like is, this summer, we have the 246-year progression of Saturn for the first time going over the Mars, you know, the air trine, which is very powerful. But it's this April that Saturn by transit hits that air trine as well. So there's a large activation that starts to happen on the United States right in April. Well, that's right when all this stuff is really igniting. The Pluto return, the finalization of the Neptune square Mars, all this bamboozlement, all this stuff's coming to a head. We're going to see some really powerful stuff happen here. Why? Because the United States chart is being activated by some very powerful progressions combined with transits. The other big one is K2. See, a lot of people say, well, what's K2? K2 is the moon's south node and Rahu is the moon's north node. Very mysterious little mathematical points. It's where the sun and the moon and the earth align and an eclipse happens. Well, they're 18 and a half year cycles, but it's all confluence when it happens. K2 ratchets back at the same time, right in March, when all this stuff is kicking in on the air trine. There is another confluence of a stimulator. So we got some serious doo-doo happening here that really kicks in a succession of things here from basically be looking from March forward. This is when I would say end of February, March forward, a lot of trigger points that are releasing across this whole structure of this country between now and into 23. And I tend to say the interrogations, I'll just complete with this, and the progressions give me more hope than fear. It really looks good. I think it's going to be a crap storm, but I think once we go through it, it's going to have some very miraculous changes for the positive. And let's pray that that's true.
Yeah, well, we always have the potential to rise out of the ashes here in this country. And we were built on that energy. Y'all don't forget that. And we had everything against us when this country was born. There was no way, but we still pulled it off, right? And so a lot of that Sphinx energy or that Scorpio to, what Elvis Levi talks about when it comes to the Phoenix, I think our country was built on that.
Yeah, it was. Yep, very powerful. And again, the power brokers knew that. That's why this country has always been vied for to get control of. And that's also why the owners use it as a dispensary. And when you think about the military, the de facto currency, I always call the Federal Reserve the dispensary of the owners who run the financial systems out of London and here, and they do. And the United States has always been the position of power where it happens through. And it's going to be very fascinating to see where this goes and how these energies release, because they're going to release. I can tell you that. They're going to release.
So that's right around April when these energies are going to release.
See, Saturn's been over K2 for about the last 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years. Really chaotic. It's right exactly. See, K2 is a destiny disruptor. Always has been, always will be. And Saturn and K2, I guarantee you, when you and I and everyone else drawing breath will have a progression of K2 over Saturn and Rahu, which is the moon's north node, over Jupiter in very special conditions, we will exit the body. Every single person I see that exits the body known as death will have those combinations. It will come for everyone differently. And it's very, very complex. But see, the United States has had that kind of, well, it hasn't had the Jupiter, but it certainly had the Saturn over K2. And I have seen a lot of weird stuff happen. And that all leaves the spring. So it's like a spring that's been winding up and boom, it starts to release by all these progressions, transits, and primary directions that are happening. And again, the Pluto return is amazing. So the Nadi astrology, as well as the tropical and also the primaries, are showing the same thing. Very powerful, unprecedented times coming. And I get that it's probably going to end up better than we think it is. We just got to stay.
You think that like a lot of people are flooding into Florida, Texas, Arizona, some of the last what they call free states. Do you think that that's a good idea, or that's going to even matter when it comes through all this, where we actually live? I mean, obviously some places are really going to suck, but when it comes to these energies, do you think that that's going to matter?
I mean, it depends on how far they take it. That's the thing. And this is the Phoenix rising out of the ashes thing. I really think we're going to see a backlash against some of this insanity that's been going on. I mean, you want to piss people off, let criminals out, smashing and grabbing and raping and murdering and pillaging, and they get a spank on the hand. I mean, this is literally engineered, designed breakdown and decay of society. And I know a lot of police officers, they're pissed off. I mean, these guys, they really don't like it. I mean, especially the ones that are veterans that have been around a long, long time. A lot of military guys saying the same thing. So, there's forces brewing here that are, I think, far stronger than we realize. People love their children. They love their grandchildren. They love this country. And I think they're pushing it just far enough where we're going to see some of these energies release, and you're going to see a backlash. It's going to be really intense. As far as moving, I mean, I got to say where we're at, we're not directly affected, even though we're in a state that is clearly insane. But where we're at, there's also a lot of good people. See, these guys are smart. They know just how far to push it. And it's really the real metropolitan areas, especially the dense areas. So it's crazy. My son just showed me a video the other night. I just couldn't believe my eyes, where these guys in a Mustang pulled in and gunned down, like, I think it was about 8 young guys. They couldn't have been more than 20. Just blew them away with a machine gun or an Uzi. And then they turned around and came back as a guy came out shooting at them. And then they gunned them all down again. They were already dead. And you could just see the body shaking, and then shot the guy shooting at them. I mean, it almost reminds me of Al Capone days. It's pretty wild. And even we still got through that. We did. This country has always survived insanity. I think the spring's about ready to snap. And if the astrology is right, we're going to see forces come into play that are probably really going to rectify a lot of the insanity that's going on. And the question is at what cost? The phoenix rising out of the ashes is always, you got to have some ashes first, So,
right. But, well, that's good to know. I mean, there's always that, right? So regardless, the energies are going to release. We're going to know where we're at. I think on an individual level, people would like to gear up. So I know that they can contact you or Camille to get a reading, but also,
everybody's going to see it.
You helped me big time with the location stuff because I could feel it when I moved, right?
Oh, God. Location astrology is amazing. It really is. See, that's the thing. I've seen people move to the so-called better states, but if they don't have good energy there, that's one of the reasons, I don't want to leave is I have good energy here. And it's just now begun to clear up for me.
Right. And then the gemstones, of course, too, that helps, right?
Tremendously. I mean, I have so many people. That's something I've really gotten into because, I know gemstones are expensive, but I have all different price points. And the thing I've always noticed about it, and these are people that come back and they say, I had the money, I didn't know if it was going to work. And then they tell me, wow, I really feel it. I'm like, I know, I'm the same way. And I always tell folks, even if you can't afford it, sometimes I can work out payments. I can't do it too much because this stuff's expensive, but I also have stuff that's pretty reasonable. And what I love is even if you wait until you can afford it, you find out which gems are right for you. It's really amazing. It really tweaks the aura. It's very analogous to riding a horse. If you've ever ridden a horse or a motorcycle over rough terrain, you'll find that, if you stand up on the pegs a little bit and you kind of get with it, that's what gemstones do. They cause a vibration that is making the aura resonate with the forces that are in your chart and impinging your chart. So people, and I love it because they work 24/7, and people always say, it's very subtle, but extremely powerful. I'm like, yes, it is. I can always tell when I don't have my on. I can feel it right away. And there's a whole procedure. What
the difference between, because I know there's gemstones being sold all over the place, but to get like the rare, formed that hasn't been corrupted or messed with gemstones, like the kind that you get, is really precious.
You just said the right words. Yep.
Yeah. A lot of people are into crystals and these things, there's tons of minerals and crystals. Trust me, I'm into them too, and I believe there's energy there. But I think
there is.
there's something to this gemstone thing for
Well, it's
sure.
called, go to my website. It's called Vedic Planetary Gemology. And what always enamored me, see, a lot of people have heard of their birthstones. The problem with birthstones is the jewelry industry have changed that several times over the last 40, 50 years. It's love, light, and cluelessness. You ain't your sun sign anyhow. Vedic astrology looks at what we call specific planetary combinations called yogas. And there are certain gemstones you want to wear. There's certain ones you don't. And there's also certain gemstones at certain times in your life during what we call planetary dosha periods that you want to wear them. And greatly enhances it. Like my son, just the other day, it's really cool. He hit a 7-year K2 dosha. In fact, if anybody goes to my Instagram, I have a little video on it. And it was really cute because you know, he's just like, Dad, you know, I know I'm going to hit this on the 23rd of December. I said, yep, get your butt in here. So I got him a crystal barrel cat's eye. And see, you said it best before. A lot of people are selling gemstones out there. Watch that 90% of the stuff out there that is sold is either heat treated, irradiated, could be lab grown. And I have found even like in old estates, oh, my grandmother had something from India, you know, 150 years. A lot of times it's heat treated. Why would they do that? Because it darkens the color and lessens the inclusion. If you're doing it for energy, you might as well stand out on the porch and light your money on fire because it alters the crystalline nature of the gems. See, gemstones are literally resonators. People say, well, does the gem have power? It resonates power. It's like a big celestial tuning fork that resonates the vibratory energy of that planet. And when it's set as a talisman to your birth chart, it's exceedingly powerful at concretizing that planetary energy for you. That's key. So in other words, when I set it, I cast the metal at a good time, just like alchemy, it is alchemy. And then I will set the stone in the piece when it's one of your angles or trines in your birth chart. And I also make darn sure that the planet ruling the gemstone is well aspected and aspects your birth chart. So sometimes I may take, 2 weeks, a month to find a good time to set it for you. And then once I send the gemstone, I have a whole procedure where people cleanse it with water 3 times, spring water, incense 3 times, that's air, and fire, pass it above that. And then they place it on an angelic square known as a yantra. And there's a prayer known as a mantra that you chant over it. We did this with my son the other night. And the ancients knew. See, your third eye chakra, if anybody goes on YouTube, I'm putting up a picture right now of your auric field with the chakras. And see, right above our eyes, right at the bridge of our nose, there's something very important known as the third eye chakra, but what it really is the Jupiter chakra. Jupiter is like the eye of the soul. This is why a lot of ancient cultures would go smack a gem on right there with paste, right? Of course, in modern society, you do that here. People look at it, oh, you're Hindu. But there's actually a lot of merit to that. So what you do is you charge the gemstone by projecting into it. All your Egyptians, your Chaldeans, your medieval, especially many of the medieval astrologers, they knew, and the kings and queens, that they would charge those gems. They would actually imbue it with angelic elementals. In fact, there's a ritual that you do that actually invites God's angel in to that gemstone to imbue it. Very, very important. And it's all intentions. So when you do this kinds of things where it's a naturally set gemstone, the metals, whatever they are cast at a good time. And the gemstone is then cleansed and charged properly. And you do that for 45 days. You can wear it right away. It's amazing what it does. It has a great power. And this was the ancient art of Vedic planetary gemology. And it's ubiquitous through the ancient world. And why did kings and queens use all this stuff? You know how many politicians I've done gemstones for, and people, very powerful business people? I mean, they know, and they don't want anybody else knowing either. They wear them under their shirt. I've done bangles. It's amazing. It's pretty amazing.
They wear them under your. Yeah, I wonder why they don't want anybody else to know. But here's the cool thing, like all
it's a
that's
linear
hidden is going to be revealed,
world.
right?
What's that?
All that's hidden is going to be revealed, right?
Well, true. But I mean, you know, again, you look at a lot of things, they like to keep them secret. That, you know, politicians are very much interested in a linear, you know, image.
Right. Well, I think this is pretty intense stuff. I can't wait to see what happens in the next 3 months. Seriously.
It's going to be a blur.
It's going to be a blur. It's going to be a beautiful, chaotic blur,
yeah.
Right? So, I mean, how busy are you when it comes to doing readings for people and stuff? I know that I know you stay pretty busy, but you ever get like gridlocked, or are you still open for all this stuff?
Yeah, I'm open. I have a lot of clients that I do business stuff for. I got a lot of really powerful real estate people. You know, that I do retainer work, you know, contracts, stuff like that. And so, yeah, and I have a lot of folks I do readings. Yeah, I always work it out. You know, I pace myself. It's a lot of work, but yeah, I enjoy it. You know.
Yeah. Well, we enjoy having you on here, Jeff. Every time that you come on here, we get ready for all this stuff. So I know have you been on Veritas yet? I can't wait to hear you talk about some of the same stuff on there.
I think this year, God, I got a pretty good lineup. I know Coast wants me on with George Norrie, and Mel's going to have me on very soon. Yeah. So, yeah, and then a couple other shows. So I don't, you know, they just call and I do them, and that's it, you know. So,
it's fun to listen to you, man. People always brag about that. They go back and listen to even some of the older shows when we first did shows together on here. And I appreciate you coming on, jumping into the late night with us and doing this thing again.
Oh, yeah. It's always good doing it with you, Joe.
You guys make sure you go to jeffharman.com. There's a ton of things you can do on there. You can book a reading. I think you do a little tutoring sometimes too. You got the gemstones, location astrology, and we can't wait to talk to you again, man. It was good having you back on here, Jeff.
You bet, man. Happy New Year.
That's right. Yeah. Happy New Year, you guys. Happy New Year's Eve. And stay tuned for the Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable. We'll be out of here. We'll see you guys next time. Good night, y'all. Sweet dreams.
All right. Okay, Joe. Well, we'll talk to you soon, bud. All right.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
You are so welcome. Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Bye.
If you need anything, you let me know.